All right, Barry, thanks for joining us. We're just going to do like a quick intro. So, my name's Joe Koziara with Frontiers. I have Ben Hoffman, who's our South America program manager here beside me, and Barry Beck, who is our expert on travel around the world, joining us. Thanks, Barry. And we're going to talk today about the Limay River.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm in the dark here. Barry, can you start by telling us maybe about, your first trip to the Limay? I think Ben maybe was involved in that, when it was, and what your first impressions were of the river, how you got there to begin with, all of those things.
Well, my first impressions of the river go way back because every guide I ever met in Patagonia, if you talk to them, and I don't care if it was a Golden Dorado guide or a trout guide, didn't matter. If you ask them their favorite river, favorite place to go fish, it was always the Limay. So it was a lot of years of listening why I should go to the Limay before I actually got there. And most of that was focused below the dam, the tailwater fishery part of that river. And I don't know the exact year that we finally got to go, but Ben was involved, Hank Ingram was involved, Jorge Truco, Jorge Biso. We had a group of friends, my Kathy and I, and we floated the river for a couple days. I immediately fell in love with the river because I caught the largest brown trout I'd ever caught in my life on it. And I do like big water at times, and it definitely is that. And we paid the price for the float because we stayed in some flea-bitten motel. That first time in my life I've been in a motel that didn't have an electrical outlet. And the keys that we got were in an old rusty can, and you found a key to fit your room. But beyond the accommodations, the fishing was spectacular. It was just one of those rivers that has a lot of character, a lot of side channels, etc. And it would be years later until we finally had a lodge that Frontiers worked with Jorge Truco, that we were actually able to go with decent accommodations and fish the river again. But to this very day, I mean, I was just in northern Argentina on a Dorado trip, and we had 4 young guides there, and we were all talking about Dorado fishing, and that soon changed to trout fishing, and it soon changed to the Limay. And they were all going to do the same thing. When their season was over, they were headed to the Limay River. It has that kind of magnetic quality that brings you back because you always have the opportunity on every cast to catch a trout of a lifetime. Over the course of years, I've watched the rainbow trout population change a lot. There's certainly more of them, and they're bigger, and they're very strong fish. So if you're swinging flies and you hook a fish and it might be 20 or 22 inches long, it fights like crazy and it turns out to be a rainbow, not a bad thing. But every once in a while you get that tug. I think people that go to the Limay need to have that steelhead or Atlantic salmon fisherman mentality that it could be 1,000 cast, it could be one, you don't know. You pay your dues, you put your time in. This past trip, Art Rourke, who's a very dear friend and a very good Frontiers client, had 5 migratory browns during the week that were all good fish, and that's really good. But he caught a ton of other rainbows as well and some other smaller browns. But these are hard, strong, fighting fish, and you certainly, like any part of Argentina, you're susceptible to winds, so you've got to go with tackle and prepare for it. But that river just captured my attention, and it's just some place that I just have to go back to. But I used to, for years and years, when we were doing programs or I was a guest speaker, we would get this, if you had one place left to fish, or one guy said one day, he said, if God gave you one more day to fish, where would it be? I said, I hope God wouldn't do that to me, but it would be Argentina, and quite frankly, it would, the Limay would be high on that list because it just has that kind of, it has a pull. You have to go back.
When we fished it, Barry, to me, it was kind of daunting. I'd never fished a river that size when we first got there. I mean, it was gigantic. But what I liked about it, and like you said, it had a character because the side channels, you pick the side channel, it would get smaller, and if we hit another one, it could be smaller still. So it didn't seem to be as intimidating to me where am I going to cast? Am I just throwing against the bank or whatever? That's what I liked about it because it did have those those different feels to it along the way. And you could get out and wade in spots, but it's not a waded river. I mean, is that how you feel about it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I've always been amazed about is you can fish some really large Chernobyl kind of flies, and you can get those big fish to come up and eat. I mean, it's just that way. We're very lucky with the guides that we have, the Patagonia river guides. Those guys know that river. And they, even though the fish are migratory fish, if they're holding and resting, they know where those fish would be holding and where they're resting. That makes a huge difference in fishing a piece of water that you don't know, you're not familiar with. And sometimes it makes a difference between either catching a fish or not. So, I mean, I've always been lucky to, spend a day in a boat with somebody who knows where we should be casting.
Mm-hmm.
And these are migratory browns. I'm going to jump in here. So you're fishing it in the South American fall?
Yeah.
Well, certainly that's prime time, as
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Ben will agree with that.
Yeah.
But even though a migratory fish, oftentimes they'll hold, they'll stay, and they'll spend some time there. So you get you can get a really big fish at a different time of the year. It just simply hasn't dropped.
So Barry, I've seen it where you've had sippers, especially those rainbows. We come off, they're eating small mayflies and things like that. Have you experienced any hatches like that, like where you've had to match the hatch, or have they been finicky like that? Have you had
The
experience
rainbows
like
can
that?
get real finicky, which I really enjoy. I mean, we had a couple pods this year that were nice fish, heads up, and they were eating small olives. And if you didn't show them a small olive, they didn't eat. They also, I noticed, are getting more susceptible to a bad cast. You want to put the whole pod down, you make one bad cast, and they go down. But on the other hand, the size certainly has increased, and the numbers has increased. And so, so maybe you haven't got that big brown, but you certainly have opportunities at some dry fly fishing too.
Yeah, and what I was really amazed with when we fished it is that those rainbows are so strong. They're just a solid silver muscle. I mean, they're ripping line. Again, you thought that was a 20-inch fish. It could be an 18-inch fish or 16-inch fish that just fought so much bigger than their size.
Well, that's the sort of the thing we hear from all our guests that travel with us down there, that they're amazed at how strong those rainbows are. They're hot fish. Everyone, doesn't matter.
So when you have such a big river system with really above average in size and strength fish, are you tackling up for those? And you mentioned swinging flies. Are we talking trout spay type stuff for that?
You have a lot of options. A lot of the local guides that go down there and fish love spay rods, and they like swinging flies with, maybe a 250, 300 grain head. And I enjoy some of that, but I would prefer to just have I fish a Sage 8100, a 10-foot for an 8, and a 250 or a 300 head. So, but I'm not just swinging, I'm retrieving, casting. I enjoy that. But if I want to fish the big Chernobyls, I just fish just a 9-foot for an 8 with something like a real grand taper. It's going to turn those big flies over. And I know one thing for sure, those browns, they're not leader shy. Those big fish, when they want to eat, they want to eat. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm often fishing OX, 2X max. That's really cool as well, because I've often come from a spring creek where I was using 6X and 7X. So, yeah, it's just part of it. But you have to understand that river, that you're probably going to have wind. It's Patagonia. Right. And you need to know how to handle wind. I know it defeats some people, but we're very lucky, again, with the guides that we use. They use the channels. We find places to get you out of the wind wherever they can. And they'll put you on a side of the river where the wind could be to your advantage. And again, that makes a huge difference. If I were going there green, I'd be lost. First, for access, and secondly, where are the fish? Having a good guide on that river is a huge plus.
And are you fishing a mix from when you're swinging these flies? Are you on foot and then doing kind of the dry fly stuff from the boat, or is it across the board?
It's both. It's both. I have one favorite fly for that river. It's called a super bugger, and I fish it's actually a size 4, and it gets down, but I like the way it undulates and makes that marabou tail move and pulsate. So that's my favorite. And on top, any of the big Chernobyls, black primarily is the color to go with.
Huh.
On the underwater stuff, olive is hard to beat, simply because of Pancora crab that's around, and olive seems to be a primary streamer color in all of Argentina, so even more than black. So, Ben, I don't know if you remember how that big fish was caught on our first trip there, but it was more by accident. We'd stopped for lunch, and everybody was having lunch, and I hadn't fished much at all. I was the photographer on the trip. And so while everybody was eating, I walked over to the boat, and I don't even know whose rod I picked up. I just grabbed a rod and went out and made a couple casts, and I hooked a fish that was in that 30-inch range, and it's a beautiful fish. And I finally landed it, and everybody came running over, and I think I took pictures of everybody but myself holding that fish. Jorge Truco was the first one.
Yeah, no kidding.
We took his picture quick and got the fish back in the water because we didn't want to tax it. And he said, "We don't need any more pictures. You have a picture of me." I said, no. So I think I had Hank Ingman and Ben, but we took 4 or 5 different people with that fish. But it was a great fish, and it was caught by accident. Yeah. I mean, I just made a couple casts, and it was luck. But, I'd rather be lucky than good.
That was a great fish. I remember that. That was a great trip too. Yeah.
So this tailwater, how far down or will you fish from the dam itself? Are you relatively close by? Or are you kind of doing the cycle like you might do on
the lodge we use is fortunately for us is located sort of in the middle of everything, and they've and certainly have a right to promote it because I use it and we go there. But they have access areas that you can float different beats every day, so you get to see the upper part close to the dam, you get to see the lower part. And they've got great takeouts, and we fish a good part of that river.
Yeah.
Is the character changing throughout those different beats, or the topography?
It's interesting. There are parts of that river where we've got broad flats against cliffs where the rainbows seem to like to hold, and that's where they feed.
Right.
And I did some shooting last year of Nico Badeshi, a friend of mine, and a guide on the river. I climbed up on top of cliff and shot straight down. Using a polarizer, I could see the whole pot of fish that he was casting too. And there were probably a good 30 to 40 fish, and their heads were up. It was really cool. And they seem to like those areas for whatever specific reason. I don't know. It might be the riffles above it is where the bugs are. I can't explain that sometimes, but there are definitely places on those flats, if you can find those cliffs, you almost always find rising fish. But some of the best is right at the lodge itself. Where we put in, there's a little bit of flat where a spring comes in to the left of that, and I almost guarantee you can go down there and find rising fish at almost any time of the day. So there's specific areas where you can look for dry fly fish, but the guys know where they are.
When you don't go down to where the reservoir is, do you float all the way down almost to there?
No, we don't.
No. Okay.
I've never been that far down.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, if I remember correctly, the river braids more the further down you go. Is that true?
Yeah, a lot of braids. Yep. So, and one of the guys would probably shoot me for just giving this up, but if you know this river really well, there are 2 or 3 small creek braids that come in, like spring creeks that come down through and have some holes. And if the water's right and you are willing to do the walk, you'd be surprised what you might find. I won't tell you where they are, but they're there. And we have this one guy, Gustavo. He knows every inch of those backwaters. He loves to look for lagoons. And some of the best fish I've shot that were resident browns were caught in those areas. It's another great thing because if it's a super windy day and you know where to go, some of those areas are pretty protected. So, we might take a 5-weight and go up those little channels and fish them with dries. And we've had a couple of fish up in there in that 25-inch class. That's a nice fish. So.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But he knows the river.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. You mentioned, the 10-foot-8s and some space stuff. When you're dry fly fishing, is it still just a longer rod, but maybe in a 5-weight or a 4-weight even, or is it?
I'm a big fan of longer rods. I mean, 9-foot's fine for me, but I really like 9.5, and 10's even better sometimes. I just like the fact if I'm wading deep, it gives me a little more leverage. I can mend easier. If I want to do some high sticking, I can do it. I think I control the line better for mending when I'm fishing out of a boat with them. Just my personal choice. I know at Sage we sell far more 9-foot rods than anything else that we manufacture, and I can understand that for general trout fishing. But for those rivers, I just like that 9.5 and 10-foot rod.
And then what are some of the hatches that you run into? You mentioned olives. Are there
Not
other
olives.
bugs that come
At
into
the
play?
time of the year that I'm there, that's the primary bug. It definitely is. And some of those riffles, if you actually go and look at the edges of them, between the weed growth and the moss and whatever there, it's perfect. It's a perfect environment for olives. But we've caught some really big fish just fishing some very large rubber leg nymphs, like patch rubber legs in brown or black on size 4s, 6s, getting them down deep. But again, the first thing that somebody goes to Limay has to understand that you're going to pay your dues. I mean, you can get lucky. I know the last day of our trip last year, Jack and Senzi had a monster fish of a lifetime. But prior to that, Jack had spent the week casting and casting and casting, and he had hooked up once or twice or missed a fish. But, you know, in the end, his efforts paid off, and he had a ground trout of a lifetime. He was like a little boy that got the best Christmas present he ever could get. And I mean, to this day, when I talk to him on the phone, it's like he's reliving that moment. I remember we had Bill and Donna Scott from Denver with us on a trip, and Bill wanted a big round so bad he could taste it. And on the last day we floated, I was floating behind him, and he hooked one. He was with Gustavo, and that fish just beat him up. But he landed it, and we photographed it, and he released it. And it was the same reaction I saw out of Jack. I mean, he still to this day talks about that fish. So it's one of those memorable things, you know. You worked for it, it worked out, you got it, and you'll always remember it.
And obviously, Steve Binnick has caught tons of them there too.
He has, but that's his favorite river in the world.
Yeah.
Steve is a friend who's done more trips than I can count all over the world with me. But if he were here right now, this moment, I bet the house and every fly rod I own, if you said, "Where's your favorite place to fish?" he'd tell you Limay River.
Yeah, he goes back all the time.
But he's willing to put the time in.
Yeah.
And he understands the river. You know, he's either going to catch something or he's not. Last year, he did get a migratory in the group. But I know his record of how many big fish he's caught there, it's got to be amazing.
Yeah.
But he understands the river, and he knows that, hey, some days it works, some days it doesn't.
But it's the potential that's bringing people back. I think I read somewhere, you know, it's not every cast, but it's any cast that could be the.
That's exactly what I said. You know, it could be cast 1, it could be 1,000. You got to have that mentality. You know, steelheaders have it. I can remember Jerry Seams at Sage, who was our rod designer, and I would call Jerry and say, you know, have you been fishing? Oh, yeah, I was on the Grand Ron. Oh, how'd you do? He said, I had a great day. He said, I moved to. He said, what do you mean you moved to? He said, I had 2 fish come to the fly. I said, you didn't hook them? He said, no, but I moved them. That's the kind of mentality you need fishing a big river. You know, if you're looking for that big trophy fish, you just need to be disciplined enough. And ironically, you need to fish every cast like it's going to be that cast, because the minute you let your guard down, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
So that's why I talk about discipline. Every cast needs to be as good as it can get. You need to keep in mind that the fly needs to get down to where the fish are. And that's very important on that river.
Right.
And you just need to, it's repetitive. It just is. If you're not interested in that, you shouldn't go to that river. If you're serious about it, you'll fall in love with it and you'll continue to go back. That's just the difference.
It sounds kind of like the muskie game from here in Western PA. You know, you gotta keep your head on it from first cast to last cast, because you never know.
You never ever know when that's going to be the right cast, and I try to explain that to people, and you know, some get it and some don't. I mean, it's just, you know, they get lazy or they just get bored, or okay, nothing's happening. You just have to be patient, you know, and keep the fly. You got to get the fly to where the fish is.
Right.
You know, if you're not fishing a 250, 300 grain, and you're not getting that fly down deep, and that's where sometimes those fish are resting, you're not going to catch them.
That's an interesting point about the personalities, and On your hosted trips, you seem to have an almost family-like relationship with the groups often, because you've traveled so extensively with some of these folks. Do you have these talks? Are there people that you say this is not for you?
I do. A
Okay,
couple, only a couple.
Yeah.
Only a couple.
Once you
Yeah.
get that personality dialed
Well,
in.
I have a good friend. One of my very, very best friends is a retired Navy Admiral, 3-star, Phil Belisle. And he's a dry fly, passionate dry fly fisherman. And he's going to Teca with us this year. But he would be lost on that river. He'd have no interest in it whatsoever. Even the pods of rainbows, because you'd have to go hunt them. That's not his kind of fishing. I know that it's just not him. So I would never suggest that he goes there.
Mhm.
You know, on the other hand, somebody like Steve Bennick, I mean, he'll pound that river to death looking for one of those fish. This is the difference between anglers, and they both obviously love to fish. Phil will fall in love with Teca. I'm sure he'll be back, and Steve loves Teca as well, but the Limay is his river.
That's a big advantage, knowing who you're talking to at the time. I think that, it kind of gets missed a lot, but having a host like yourself that really can kind of play matchmaker, I guess. Personalities for waterways, and
there's a lot of different descriptions of a host, what a host really is. But the bottom line is there's sort of an insurance policy. I mean, we try to make sure they have the right flies, the right gear. We help them with anything we can while we're there. Over the years, I've been marriage counselors. Let's see what else, stuff like that. But you're right. A lot of people go back because we develop friendships within the group.
Right.
So like the big one every year, with pretty much people that go every year, they rebook every year. They get together with their friends. They now become friends. And I think that's really cool. As far as a family-like thing, Dave and Pat Smith are a great example, and they are like part of my family. They've traveled with me and continue to travel with me. Fantastic people. Dr. David Thiemann. I mean, I just go on and on and on about these people that come back every year because we do. It's like having a reunion on a river that we love. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? This is 30 years of hosting for Frontiers. And I only have 3 people on a no-fly list. That's amazing. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It gives credit to the people too. I mean, we really have good people. You find that in the fly fishing community, though. You really do.
Everybody's got at least one big thing in common.
Yeah. But back to the Limay, I'm really serious. I know on a local level, I'm not too far from the Delaware River, which is probably our best tailwater fishery in the East. And there are guys that are so passionate about that river that they go and go and go. And I can tell you there are days on that river, you just get beat up, and there are other days when you reap the rewards. And it's the same thing on the Limay. I know the bottom line is if you fall in love and you've got the patience with the river, you'll go back.
How old is that river? You guys know when?
I think wasn't it dammed in the 80s, Barry?
In the 80s sometime. I don't know the exact time. Yeah.
And were they designing it, or did it just happenstance that it became such a fantastic fishery?
Well, it's the same with the Delaware. It's
Yeah.
the same kind of thing that happened. I mean, they created that tailwater fishery and the trout came.
Mm-hmm.
But on the Delaware, when I was a kid, my best friend had a cabin on the West Branch, and we would catch smallmouth bass. They built a reservoir, and the bass disappeared, and the trout moved in. And for about 4 or 5 years, that was like the best kept secret. And then the guys that were catching smallmouth on Rapalas started catching nice trout.
Jack Brown trout.
And today, again, it's our best tailwater fishery in the East, I think. So, yeah, I mean, it's just if you're not patient, you don't want to put the time in, then you don't belong in those kind of rivers. They're not going to be fun for you.
So with that, what's the day start out like when you have these guides? Are they reading the clients and kind of, hey, we're going to start you, maybe throwing a single hand streamer rod and then we'll move into some dry fly, or is there a progress of the day?
Well, sometimes, but the advantage of, again, I can't place enough value on having a guide that knows the river.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows what you need to start with and how we're going to start.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we don't find a lot of fish up in the morning, which we do looking for some rising fish. And usually the retrieves in the morning tend to be a little slower. Sometimes the fish are, tailwater fishery pretty much has a constant water temperature. So it doesn't vary sometimes with the mood of the fish. And yet there I find that from 10 o'clock on till dark, I think I move more fish than I do in that first hour and a half. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way it starts, but it's just knowing the river. And again, coming back to having that guide. I mean, I can't imagine fishing that river on my own.
Mhm.
Well, first, access would be an issue. But
Right.
secondly, these guides that are on the river on a daily basis, even here, our guides here, we know where the fish are, okay? And they know where the fish rest. These migratory fish will rest at a particular place or pool, and they know where that is. So you're fishing areas that could be more productive than just covering the whole pool.
Mhm.
I know oftentimes Pablo, probably the head guide at the lodge that we use, I mean, he'll fish for part of a stretch of a river and then quickly row over to the other side. And I said, why are we rowing over there? Because the fish hold over here. He knows that.
Mhm.
You can't put a price on that.
And another thing I liked about that river too, I mean, is that if you and I were putting in together in the morning, that might be the only time I see you until we're back at the lodge at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
it's so big and so vast that that's what I like about it too, because each day is different. You can take a different braid, different channel, and you'll never fish the same water necessarily twice in the time you're there.
Well, there's just so much water to fish.
Yeah.
And the beats are so spread out.
Yeah.
And even we often put 3 boats in together and we don't see them again until lunchtime because, we'll just do different channels. Or
Yeah.
in my case, because I'm the host, we hold back. I certainly don't want to fish ahead of our guest. And truthfully, you don't need to. I mean, there's just that much water.
Yeah.
Are these traditional drift boats that you're fishing on, Western style drift boats?
Yeah, mostly hides looking
Mhm.
boats, that kind of a boat. I think actually some of them are hides. Some of them have anti-drifters kind of boats. They're all comparable. They all move back and forth across the river well. I don't like rafts, so I'm very happy that we're not in a raft. I'm a photographer. I don't want my cameras laying in water. And I think the boat's much more comfortable and much easier, especially in wind. I mean, and you get wind on that river. I look at some of the other outfitters that are using rafts, and I just, no, thank you. I'm a guide. I've been a guide almost all my life. I've had a couple air rafts, super plumas, and I know in Alaska when the wind came up, I hated them.
You go right up with it.
Oh man, I mean, one day we had to get out and pull the raft. The wind was just too bad. But with a drift boat, you can spin it around. You can pull the boat into the wind if you have to. And it's much more maneuverable. I think much more comfortable for the guests as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just telling someone who's never been there before, just accessing that river on one of your trips. I mean, can you talk to that? How you get there, how where you fly to and from?
Well, obviously Bariloche for us is the closest airport to get us there.
Right.
And it's not a bad ride to the river itself.
Right.
And I'm an avid 4-wheeler off-roader, so my cars are almost always Land Rovers, and it doesn't bother me at all. But some people who, if you're riding in a new Mercedes all day long, you wouldn't like that road. But it's okay. Like I said, you pay a price for everything, so you get over the bumpy road. Right. And each day when you drive from the lodge to the river, it's going to be a short 15, 20 minutes. It could be as long as 3/4 of an hour till you get where you're going. And then it's an all-day float until they pull you out at night. Mm-hmm. And the lodge itself, I've always been impressed. It's very comfortable. Mm-hmm. I have a favorite chef there. He disappeared for 1 year, but this year he was back. And I've sort of find this guy all over Argentina. He's really good. I was happy to see him again. You got to like beef. You don't go to Argentina if you don't like beef.
Right.
It's the way it is, but it's good. I mean, I love it, and I'm a carnivore anyhow. So I've always enjoyed the food and the appetizers. You always get empanadas; those are cool. So I eat food that I really enjoy there. And I just fell in love with Argentina the first year I went. For a long time, it was New Zealand, and then when I sort of got settled into Argentina, and it just was like, this is, to me, the American West without people. And the variety of water, the amount of water, whether it's, the Magreo or Teca, or doesn't matter. But when it comes to big rivers that I fished, there's nothing that compares to the Limay. It's nothing. And, once you hook one of those big fish, it's just, we talk about the rainbows pulling. Well, you hook an 8-pound or 10-pound brown trout. you've got your hands full.
Yeah.
But that's the cool part about it. I remember Sarah Shahale, one of my best friends, hooked a fish there one day, and she was guiding with Nico, and that fish came racing right down by me. I stood there with a camera. I saw it going. It looked like it was a bullet. Unfortunately, the hook pulled out, but I mean, the expression on her face, the way the rod was bent, the guide was screaming, and I was yelling, and it all happened so fast. But it was one of those moments you'll always remember.
Yeah.
I think that fish made it all the way back to the bottom. I don't know. He was heck meant to go somewhere.
Get that rooster tail
cool.
coming off like a bonefish run or
No
something.
kidding. Yeah, really.
What's the lodge like, Barry? You mentioned Jorge, who I know is hand in hand with so many of these great fisheries down there, and probably a testament to him with the guide level too. I assume.
Oh yeah, to a point. But Truco, I mean, we give the guy credit always because he started all this. He went to the estancias that were hunting estancias that had water, and say, how about the fishing? Because he was guiding. So, I mean, to his credit, we wouldn't have, well, maybe we would now, but for a long time, we wouldn't have had the fisheries that we have access to. And the Limay was definitely his favorite river. I mean, there was no question about it. And so he was so excited when they finally actually did get the lodge on the river itself. And you have to understand the logistics of the lodge. I mean, there's not much down there. There's a couple of gas stations, and other than that, there's not. I think the old Flea Bitten Hotel is gone, but
is it really?
Yeah,
it's
I think
not there
so.
anymore.
I didn't see it. So, but the lodges, I mean, everything I'd want in a lodge is comfortable. It's spacious. The food is good, and I just really am happy it is situated where it is, because we have so much access to both water upstream, upriver, and downriver. And quite frankly, in front of the lodge, upstream just a little bit, I've caught some of my biggest trout on the way, almost pulling in to get to takeout. So, yeah.
So this,
go ahead.
I mean, this lodge, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this lodge, I mean, like you said, there's nothing there. It's pretty. You're in a sort of a high desert area. But you have to be a fisherman to go to Limay, because there's really nothing there for you to do other than fish.
You're absolutely right, Ben. We don't have the ambience of the Andes. The scenery is desolate. And yet, maybe because I'm a photographer, I see so much beauty in the sunrise and sunsets that we get there that are incredible. I mean, see that big orange ball going down over the river at night, and I'm just happy to sit there and watch it fall. So certainly there is, and wildlife, I mean, forget it. You see foxes, not much more.
Yeah.
And that's it. We don't have red stags running around bugling. Bird life, there's not too much birds that can exist in that environment. So you're right. You go to the fish. It's sort of like the Bighorn. You go to Fort Smith, you look at Fort Smith and say, who would want to live here? Well, a fishing guide would. And it's the same way on the Limay, because there is nothing else there. And yet there's beauty in the river, and the light on the river is spectacular sometimes. I mean, I've seen reflections of boats. I've photographed there many times, reflection of boats and anglers casting with that big orange ball falling behind it. I mean, for a photographer, those are magical moments. So, yeah, you can, whatever you want to talk about, the lodge is not the Taj Mahal, but for a fisherman, it's functional, it's clean. I have hot water at night. The bed is comfortable, and the food is good. So what else could I ask for? Good guides, good boats, and a beautiful river.
Are most of the staff, the guides, then, are they living on or near the property?
The guides, obviously, the guides stay there. They're a long way from home.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so they have their accommodations, and usually at the dinner table at night, we'll have at least one guide come and join us, which we always are happy for. And the guides that they have, and it's a good thing, love that river. I mean, you'd have to. You're rowing a boat in wind a lot, and you're rowing a boat where people are throwing big streamers over your head. You don't wear a hard hat, but you wish to make sure the barbs are pinched down. I mean, and they're patient, and they have to be, otherwise they wouldn't be down there.
Argentine guides? or a mix
Absolutely.
of Western?
Well,
and-
No, they
Argentine.
don't let them.
no Western.
No,
Yeah, we
Western.
take one guide with us. Is Nico Baldeschi is oh boy, describing this guy would take a while. I could write a book about him, but he's an Italian who guides in Argentina, who butchers the English language and butchers the Spanish language. And quite frankly, I can't understand any of his Italian either. But everything he owns breaks. I'm serious. Everything breaks. So during the day something's going to break. And but beyond that, he's a hoot to spend time with, and he knows the river. He loves the river, and he got Jack and Senzi into that big fish last year. So he's the exception. Everybody else we use, yeah, they are Argentines, and they all love the river, and they all know it. The one guy, Gustavo, is a passionate streamer guy. He ties the most beautiful streamers. And you get him on that river, and he is just so excited. In fact, he gets more excited than the guests when they catch a fish. And sometimes he almost loses it. But that's the kind of attitude I like in a guide. I mean, when I'm taking guests on a trip, that's the kind of guide I want for my guest. Somebody who's really into it, somebody who's patient, somebody who understands that, we're going to make a lot of casts, and we got to keep the guest happy and keep encouraging them. And he does that. So, yeah, very, very lucky. We have Nestor is our head guide for Jorge Truco, and I don't know of a more patient guide that I've ever worked with. I mean, the boat could be sinking. He'd have some positive thing to say. He just is always up. It's never down. He's just straight Nestor. He doesn't vary, and he'll convince you in the morning that you're going to catch a fish, and at night, if you haven't, he's still pushing. He still thinks you're going to catch one. We're very blessed to have the guide staff that we have. I've worked with guides all over the world. I've hired and fired guides. I've been a guide all my life, and so I know a little bit about the other side of the coin. What the guide has to do to get through the day with the guests that he has. And oftentimes we'll rotate guides, and sometimes we won't rotate guides, because sometimes I find a guide fits better with a certain client. He's going to have more patience if that's necessary. And so that's pretty much what I try to do, is match up the guide and the client together so that it's going to all work. But I've been so lucky down there with the Argentine guides that I see a grade of perfection that's come along over the years, that they do their absolute best, and they take their job very seriously. When I first went to Argentina, there were 2 American guides there working for Truco, and there were 3 Argentine guides. The Argentine guides that first year, I had one, his name was Blackie, and that's all I can remember. He had about 6 flies in a box, none of which I would use, and took me to the slipperiest place on the Magreo that we had, which I quickly fell in. And today I go down there, and my gosh, I'd put those guides up against any good American guide that I know. They are good. And what I like about it is that they are very professional, and they take it personally. And you have to work to become a guide in Argentina. It's not like Pennsylvania. Any of us could be. I'm been a licensed Pennsylvania guide since I had to buy a license, but it's multiple choice questions. And the really cool thing about the test is you get true or false. And if you pick the wrong one, something comes up and says, "Are you sure that's the correct answer?" So obviously it's not. So you can get 100. If you can't score, you shouldn't even get in the car, because it's that easy. So not that way in Argentina. You work. I mean, you pay your dues and put the time in before you actually can get a guide license.
That's an interesting idea. Those boats and stuff, are they all lodge owned? Are these guys coming up and buying their own boats, or
a lot of them now on their own boats?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Limay River Lodge has their boats. They've got a good stable of boats there. But Nico, he hauls around his own boat that he likes. So it depends. Some of the independents do have their own boats, but more or less we use Truco's boats.
Inventory.
Yeah. They're all good.
What about your packing list? You mentioned a 10-foot-8, which I would imagine does not go with you on every fishing trip. Is there anything else that's unique that you pack for the Limay that maybe doesn't go on the majority of your trips, or anything you recommend to guests going down? Like, hey, you might want to think about, grabbing one of these.
Well, for sure, just a couple things that because you're stripping all the time there is using stripping fingers because you can rip your fingers up pretty hard, especially if you're casting and stripping hard. So it's a little tiny thing that you wouldn't even think about, but it will save your fingers. And the fly size is what's really important. It's not always big stuff, but there are times when the big stuff will move the bigger fish for you. So you need a variety of streamers that are both small and large, and flies that will swim, and especially flies that can create vibration. That helps the fish find the fly. And people sometimes don't believe that, but it is true. They can feel that, which is why bulky sculpin kind of flies, that kind of stuff that pushes water, which is why I like the super bugger. It pushes water. I did try a mouse a couple times, but I never caught anything on it. I thought it was cool to get one of those fish to come up and eat it, but it was like an hour and nothing, and so I took it off. But maybe if I stayed up with it. But you absolutely don't want to think about going to Limay without some sink tip lines, some serious sink tip lines, 350s, 300s, on a rod stiff enough to turn those flies over, and a rod stiff enough to fight that kind of fish. And I took a couple of the Sage Sonics down there, 796 and 896s, and they were awesome rods because I'm promoting Sage, but you want that kind of action, that medium fast stuff that's going to push a fly in the wind, turn that fly over. And of course, the fly line profile is very important. The right profile to make that rod load is critical. So if you go down there, you want to be prepared to throw big flies, fight big fish. Not to say
Outbound
that you always
shorts
fish
and
big.
are
I'm
you
sorry.
throwing the outbound shorts in those sinking lines? Is that kind of
what?
a really aggressive head?
I grew up with my father owning a tackle shop, and I used to watch people come in. My dad was an Orvis dealer, a Leonard dealer. They'd come in and pick up a bamboo rod and wiggle it a little bit, and they would like it. They'd look at the price tag and they never liked it. And they'd buy the fly rod and they'd ask for a reel. He was a Hardy dealer, so I'd listen. They'd reel the reel and they'd hear the click and they'd get excited. And they would say to my dad, "Give me a fly line." Because in those days, we didn't have many choices. We had double tapers and we had weight forwards, and we didn't have many functions to speak of either. I mean, if you go on Reel's website, for instance, today, it would almost confuse you with the amount of profiles we have. And yet it's critical, especially throwing these big stuff, that the line profile loads the rod properly. It has to be a good marriage there for it really to get the 100% effort out of that tackle you want it to. I think one of the most creative lines that Reel has ever come up with is the outbound short. I know, for instance, Jurassic Lake, I would never take anybody there unless they were equipped with outbound shorts, because that line will load the rod. It's a sort of a shooting head for you. It's, I think, the best casting line I've ever cast for a profile to throw big flies into wind. It's amazing. And so that is, I'm a huge proponent of the outbound short, and I don't think enough people pay attention to it. But for that river, it's the perfect line. It really is.
Yeah, that and all the stripping that you mentioned, steering clear of those textured lines is my other thing. Cut your hand pretty good. Day stripping textured lines. All right. What else we got to cover? Anything else you can think of, Barry, that you want to mention about the trip? I know you have another trip coming up there, not too far off. Oh, one question I have. So the big migratory browns, are they getting big migratory rainbows coming up into the system on the other end of the season?
No. Brown trout. It's a brown trout fishery by
Uh-huh.
far if you're looking for a big boy.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. From my perspective, I spend about 200 days a year on the road for Frontier, sometimes as many as 250. And I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you that the department in Argentina is between what the job that Ben and his staff do and Hank Ingram is incredible. Oftentimes our clients don't really realize what goes on behind the scenes on getting people to and from the destination. And I've been around this block a long, long time. I've even had some offers from other competitors to go to work for them. I would never leave Frontiers because the relationship I have with the staff is we are family and we work hard at it, and they do a really good job. And as patient as I have to be sometimes, they have to be even more patient because sometimes our guests just don't understand what's going on behind the scenes, and there's a lot, especially our air department. Oh my God, I'd never do that, because flying today between canceled flights, delayed flights, no flights, too expensive flights, bad seats. I mean, it goes on forever. So, people like Lisa Batten, she ought to wear some kind of a crown. But to put a
She
trip
does.
together,
She's got one on right now.
no kidding. I mean, it's one thing here to go fishing on Penns Creek and I drive an hour and a half away. But when you're, getting somebody set with gear, getting their accommodations, working deals out in Buenos Aires, for instance, getting people from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the domestic airport, which is some of the, I think it's terrible, but we have to get through it to get where we're going. And to make all that happen takes a lot of work. It really does. And sometimes it doesn't work, but everybody does their best. And I really appreciate about our company.
It's a kind statement. And, you're just bringing up the connections and foreign travel. It brings to mind, too, the travel insurance. And we talk a lot about this, but everybody's lugging thousands of dollars worth of equipment across the world with them all the time. And it's hard to overstate the importance or the value in having that extra coverage, because we talk about it here. When you lose a bag with an airline, they have a set amount, so they don't care if it's got
Right.
six high-end Ables inside there. They give you the same amount of money.
That's right.
So that's a good reminder.
But if you're just happy fishing around home and that's what you like, that's fine too. But there's, I think the best point I could make is a lot of people, they'll catch a big trout in Pennsylvania. It might be pellet fed, etc. It's a big fish, and if you're happy with that's okay. But our trips are not just about catching fish. Certainly the Limay is about looking for a big brown trout, but it's more about the adventure of the trip. I mean, the culture, the environment where you're fishing, and even the travel itself, sometimes it's a little bit frustrating. It's still part of it. And in the end, you look back and say, wow, I did it. And I caught this fish, or I didn't catch this fish, but I made a new friend, or I've eaten food I've never eaten before. There's a whole lot more to it than just catching a fish. I mean, catching a fish, I can go across the street in my pond and catch a fish. But that's not, our trips are not just about catching fish. It's about the adventure, I think.
Yeah. And I like Buenos Aires too. Buenos Aires is a beautiful city, and where you stay is a really nice place. And
oh my gosh, it's my favorite city in the world.
Yeah.
My least favorite city is Paris. My favorite city, the French don't like us. I hope you know that. Anyhow, I really, really love Buenos Aires. I become friends with some of the restaurant servers, and I know some things about their families, and where Ben puts us in the Recoleta area, there's lots of safe things to do. You can actually go for a walk. And each weekend they have art fairs not far from our hotel. Right. We have a cemetery that is very unique and rare if you like cemeteries, but Udita is buried there, and there's a long story with that. And although our contact in Buenos Aires is MK Travel, and the leader of that is Monica Dole, and she's a sweetheart. She still gets the job done, and I've watched her pull the rabbit out of the hat so many times and save our trip from losing tackle to passports to you name it, to taking care of people who have had accidents. We had a lady sprained her foot last year and ruined the whole trip for her. I mean, just stuff like that. Monica just takes care of it. But she's on my back all the time because I'm a huge Starbucks fan. And she said, you can't come to Argentina and have a Starbucks coffee. And I said, I've got 3 Starbucks within walking distance of my hotel. So she actually had a Starbucks last year. I think one of the first ones. But she wouldn't say she liked it. But no, we're very lucky. The area that we stay in is great restaurants available, things to do, and the hotels, a couple that we use, they're really nice. They're well staffed and really nice, and it's a very safe area. And that's important in a big city.
Yeah.
Do a lot of the guests then extend? Do they spend extra time in Buenos Aires?
Oh my goodness, we have one couple, Jan Goring. Sometimes he stays for a month.
Yeah.
They just fell in love with Argentina. They've been all over Argentina. They just love it. And we have a lot of people that will do a day earlier, a couple days later to go see a tango. I mean, some of the tangos there are just incredible. And sometimes you can see at the art fair just tango dancers practicing, and they'll put a hat out. But yeah, it's just so cool.
All right, so good steak, good wine, and 10-pound brown trout.
It's hard to beat.
Sounds okay.
Sounds okay.
Yep.
To me.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you've told me over the years that's one of your favorite trips is going to Argentina. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or join your trips, how would they do that?
Well, I have a website. Obviously, it's barryandkathybeck.com. You can just Google my name and it comes up. But from that point on, they can see my trip list, but they also can see my hosted trips on Frontiers on your website. And, while I work in the field, poor Ben's stuck in the office working on the phone. So when somebody calls me, I just say, call Ben.
Yeah.
He takes care of everything.
Yeah.
So, no, it's been a great relationship, and I appreciate the hard work that everybody does in the office. And being out in the field for me is, I enjoy every adventure, and I've met so many nice people and so many good people. Like I said, 30 years of travel and 3 people on a no-fly list. That's incredible. Really incredible. Yep. So
we're gonna have to dig those names up and do a separate call on them.
Oh, Ben knows them all.
I'm not naming names.
No. But no, it's great. And fly fishing continues to, although people don't realize it. I know that we have these meetings within our industry about how to grow the sport. Quite frankly, growing the freshwater trout fishing, I don't think we need to do that anymore. Our parking lots are full. I think we need to push warm water, salt water, et cetera, where there's a lot more room. But when you go to Argentina, and I mean, I know we're talking about the Limay, but Teca, for instance, with 92 miles of water. I mean, my gosh, that's incredible. You don't see anybody. And we won't see many people on the Limay ever either, including our guests. But still, to be able to go to a country that offers the quality fisheries that they have and not see a lot of people is refreshing.
Yeah.
I don't mind sharing water with somebody, but sometimes when I lived on the Yellow Breeches for a little bit, and I went down one night and the people were lined up shoulder to shoulder, and I thought, it's just not for me. It's just not. I understand that people will do it, and some people consider it fun, but wow, being in that open air environment in Patagonia, nothing like it.
The solitude. One question that just popped into my mind, Barry and Ben as well. The Limay system. You mentioned a couple of the spring creeks that feed into the Limay, but when people go there, they can expect to be on the Limay all day, every day.
Oh my gosh,
they're
yes.
not branching off to other waters.
No, those little spring creeks are just, honestly, 1 or 2 guides know them, that fish them, and they'll explore them, and they'll find a fish here or there, and they'll take you there to catch it. But no, the focus is on the river itself for sure.
And the tailwater nature means that it's going to be fishable and in good shape. They're not doing any pulsing or fluctuation that's going to affect.
Well, yeah, they do. I mean, it's a tailwater fishery. You have to understand that occasionally when they need power or they need water or vice versa, they'll cut it back. Those are just things you live with.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I've never been there when I couldn't fish. Let's put it that way.